There are actually not any real scandals to talk about for a change, so they're actually dying down. No doubt after Stephen Harper gets out, more will come out afterwards. But for right now, they've actually died down a bit. I'd actually, for once, have to do digging if I wanted to report on more scandals with the Conservatives. There is, however, a scandal or an attempt at a scandal on Jack Layton. I'm also going to talk about Jack Layton as a leader, because understand, I'm not trying to promote Jack Layton or the NDP as being this great choice for Canada. I just like to see what they could do when they get in. Whether or not Jack Layton is a great leader, I'll get to that in a moment. But first, I want to go into the scandal. Now, I've been saying to people, not on video, but I've been saying to people that it's quite something that the Conservatives haven't been able to come up with any scandals for Jack Layton. He appears to be pretty squeaky clean because they haven't found anything on him, and no doubt they're looking. The only thing they've been able to find on him was a police note, which has been released to the public, that indicates that Jack Layton was seeing a masseuse, that he was at a massage parlor, or I believe a massage clinic, and was having a massage. And the police officer informed him that this particular clinic, although it was government registered apparently, was involved in some illicit actions, and it's not a good idea for you to be here. So Jack Layton said okay, and he left. So there is no evidence. I'm not saying he didn't do anything wrong, but I'm saying is that there is no evidence to indicate that he did. No charges were laid against Jack Layton. And so this is not a scandal. This is an attempt at a scandal. There's a big difference between evidence or proof in witness testimony about criminal actions, which has almost constantly been coming out about the Conservatives in recent weeks, and finding something that says maybe possibly Jack Layton might have been involved in something illegal. Those are two completely different things. There is no scandal against Jack Layton, not yet anyway. Apparently this is the best the Conservatives could do. Ironically, the law has been broken here. The law was broken in by sneaking into police records and taking a police note and releasing that illegally to the public. The police are now searching for whoever did this because that was illegal. So what's hilarious here is that you have Conservatives, obviously, breaking the law to try to make Jack Layton look bad. This has backfired based on what I've heard on television, but people have said on comments online. I'll go into that in a little bit. It's backfired on them, okay? Jack Layton's popularity is still going up, according to the polls. Again, I'm trying to ignore them, but anyway, so that's the best they could come up with. See, it makes them look bad because not only do they have to break the law to try to make Jack Layton look bad, which only makes the Conservatives look bad, but it shows that pathetically is the only thing they could find on him. So in terms of scandals, in terms of him breaking the law and stuff like that, this is the best they could come up with. Hilarious. That's also another hilarious example of how utterly, pathetically hypocritical Harper and his group are. They would actually break the law to try to make Jack Layton look bad. They are hypocritical to such a ridiculous extent, and never-endingly so. Anyway, Jack Layton's wife has actually defended him on this, and stating that, as far as they knew, it was just a regular massage parlor. She has stated, "No one was more surprised than my husband when the police informed him of allegations of potential wrongdoing at this establishment," Mrs. Chow said. "Any insinuation of wrongdoing on the part of my husband is completely and utterly false." Yes, and I've had some people commenting in support of Stephen Harper on this, saying, "What do you think about Flash Jack?" Well, what do I think about Flash Jack? It's the equivalent of finding a sports player naked in a room full of a bunch of naked men. In other words, a locker room. And saying sometimes illegal drugs are handed around in that locker room. So this particular sports player, he's probably in on it. Based on what? There is no evidence. If there's no charges laid and no evidence, you've got nothing. You see what I mean? To say it's reaching is an understatement. There's no scandal here. So Nice try. And yeah, it is a nice try. Sneaking into police records and finding a note of this issue is the best that they've been able to do. Um, so this is something I'm going to read briefly from the Globe and Mail. It says, meanwhile, on a day when the Sun newspaper chain run a story about Mr. Layton visiting a Toronto massage parlor 16 years ago, Mr. Nanos said the NDP leader's personal leadership score significantly improved and surpassed those of Mr. Harper's. Because this kind of thing, mudslinging, does not make you look good. It would only make Layton look bad if in fact it was a scandal of some kind. Ideally not on his personal life, but on something that indicates political corruption, as has constantly come out about the Conservatives. Stephen Harper's latest desperate attempt to try to win this thing is to attack Liberal voters. He is saying that a vote for the Liberal Party is a vote for Layton because it's a vote against the Conservatives. He tries so hard to rely on the public being stupid and fearful. I guess that's the kind of mentality that votes for Stephen Harper. Stupid and fearful people, since that is what he goes for. And of course, Western Canadian Republicans, as Harper describes that movement of which he is a part. And yes, we've had a Canadian Republican government. Now we know how the Americans feel. Anyway, I'm saying that the NDP are going to get in for a number of reasons. First of all, locally, I've heard a lot about the conservative voters turning against the Conservatives. They are fed up with the Conservatives. They're not going to be voting Conservative this time. Again, this is a very conservative, pro-conservative area, always has been. So that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to vote at all. Those that do vote against the Conservatives are not going to be voting for the Liberals because they're the enemy, understand. They're going to be voting either NDP or Green Party, and most likely the NDP. In fact, a news report was on showing a lot of students, of course, are going to be voting NDP and are voting this time, and some of them voting for the Green Party. As well, there is an NDP trend. Most people go with trends, and right now the NDP are trending, so to speak. Even the mainstream media have been on board with this, acknowledging that there is this movement towards the NDP and Jack Layton, and it looks like the NDP could have their first government. So with this movement happening, more people are going to jump on board. Again, ignoring the polls, I don't trust them. By basic common sense, I think we're going to have an NDP government. I think they actually have a chance at a majority. And I know it sounds crazy, or it would sound crazy normally, but these are extraordinary circumstances. If you trust the polls to any extent, which again I really don't, it looks like a lot of people still don't like the Liberals or trust the Liberals. A lot of people, I guarantee you, are pissed off at the Conservatives. So the NDP are the logical choice. These are extraordinary circumstances that have allowed the NDP the opportunity to have their first government. In my opinion, from what I see, they're definitely going to get in. If they get a minority, which to be safe, I'll bet that they probably will get a minority, but it will be by a fair margin. I don't think they're just going to barely sneak in. I think they're going to get in by a fair amount of votes, and I think the Liberals will come in second. Again, I'm ignoring the polls. And I think the Conservatives will come in third, and then followed by the Green Party with a close fourth, because again, people have been more and more pissed off with the Conservatives, and the Liberals too, I guess. So the Green Party will be getting a lot more votes as well. So that's what I see happening. I see the end of the Conservative Party. I base this on common sense, not on the polls, on the fact that all of these scandals have pissed off a lot of people. By all logic, I don't see Elections Canada as many times as they've stood up firmly against Stephen Harper. I don't see vote fraud, at least not for the Conservatives, happening here. Not easily, anyway. So I see the end of the Conservative Party, the Harper Conservatives, I should say. And I just want to say that I don't think that the Canadian people are against conservatism at this time. I don't think people are fed up with conservatism. I think they're fed up with Harpertism. I'm really sure, based on things I've heard, that if they don't get in this time, they're either going to boot out Harper, and I hope all of his reformist pals, and or they're going to separate and reform. They're either going to reform the party or they're going to separate and create a new conservative party. If they do that, I really hope they go back to their roots, because there was a time when the Conservative Party was a damn good party. There was a time when the conservatives would call free trade not only un-Canadian, undemocratic. It was considered a betrayal of what Canada stands for. So that is a very different mindset, very different mentality than the conservatives we have today. Of course, Brian Mulroney originally signed us up on the free trade agreement. So if they could get back to their roots, they could have a party that Canadians would actually want to vote for, that maybe even I might actually want to vote for, and I'm not very conservative leaning, but we have to get rid of the free trade agreement. And if they could get back to their roots, I think they could have a good party. If they don't, they're going to have a hell of a time convincing the public that they've really changed. Of course, there'll always be people who will vote conservative, but I think the general public are really fed up with the conservatives, and they're going to have a hard time forgetting Stephen Harper. But again, I don't think that it's conservatism that people are angry at, it's Harpertism. And I think that we need a Conservative Party of Canada, because in a democracy you need a balance. You need different interests to be balanced out. And as long as there are conservative-leaning Canadians, they're going to want to have a Conservative Party to vote for. The problem is that they don't really have a Conservative Party. Allowing big American businessmen to come in here and buy up our companies and corporations isn't very conservative, is it? So like I say, if they could get back to their roots, they could actually be a great party again, if they were to. One thing is for sure, they have to distance themselves from Stephen Harper as far as possible. So that's my 2 cents on what's happening. I see an NDP government. Not only that, I see them getting in, perhaps with a minority government, but by a fair margin. I'd just like to briefly add that I've just discovered something interesting. Terry Molesky has been following Stephen Harper on his campaign and annoying him quite a bit with a lot of pertinent questions. And Harper has recently ignored another important question of his, as people in the crowd, supporters of Harper, were trying to drown out his question. And the question was, would he accept a coalition if the Governor General approved it, which is, of course, democratic, or would he fight it? And Harper refused to answer this. Then a Tory supporter jeered and booted, reports the Globe and Mail, the reporter, and a member of the audience shouted, "Shut down the CBC," to which the crowd applauded. Shut down the CBC. Harper, if you read the book Harperland, doesn't like the CBC, reportedly, because it is largely liberal controlled, at least he believes, and it is certainly the news to an extent. For example, when the anthem for Hockey Night in Canada, the CBC was going to need some extra funding to be able to keep the anthem, and this was argued to be Canada's second anthem in a way, and Harper refused to fund that because it's the CBC, and everyone knows he hates the CBC. So people who might like Hockey Night in Canada might not be appreciative of Harper for that. And I also want to just add briefly that on Jack Layton, of course, a lot of people suspect that he's actually working for the globalists. He may be another Barack Obama. Barack Obama also promised to bring the soldiers home. Jack Layton is saying the same thing. Barack Obama went back on his promise. Jack Layton is promising, well, he's supposed to stand against free trade. Obama said he's standing against free trade, and now, of course, he's working with Harper to decongest the border, which is the beginning of the North American Union. So, as a possibility, is Jack Layton? I honestly don't know, but I want to give the man a chance. Let's find out what kind of man he is, what kind of leader he is, by what he does. If he gets just a minority government, at least then we can see what he stands for, what kind of deals he'll sign on, what he'll speak out against, and then we'll know whether Canada is a one-party system or not.